Hello and welcome. I just want to start off by thanking and congratulating the previous panel on a very important discussion. And thank you to Global Toronto for including that in this conference. I'm Kristen Gelfand. I'm the Managing Director of Uma Nota Culture. And I'm here today with Eric Stein of TIO CHORINHO. And we're both joining you from Toronto, which is the territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas of the New Credit. We want to thank everyone for joining us here for the spotlight on TIO CHORINHO. I'll start off with a brief intro to the organization that I work for, Uma Nota Culture. We're a small Toronto-based not-for-profit presenter, mainly focused on what we like to broadly call tropical music. And we have always maintained a strong emphasis on dance floor culture. To give you a bit of the feel of what we do, we'll start off just with a quick video. So let's have a watch. So that video gives you a bit of the general flavor of what we bring at Uma Nota Culture. And our background is that we got our start throwing parties in the mid-2000s in West End Toronto primarily, bringing together DJs, percussion groups, and live bands with a highly participatory audience. And as I said earlier, a focus on tropical genres. Today we have a yearly festival called Mixto, and we do year-round presentations of local, national, and international acts, many of those in partnership with other Toronto presenters, as well as presenters around the world. And we, throughout this time, have maintained a strong focus on Brazilian artists, which brings me to what you're here for today, which is the spotlight on TIO CHORINHO. TIO CHORINHO are the first ensemble in Canada to be dedicated to the performance of Brazilian choro music. Now, some of you might be unfamiliar with choro music. In the simplest terms, it can sometimes be described as the New Orleans jazz of Brazil. It's also the root of all that we recognize today, generally as Brazilian music. It's improvisational and a jazz-like form, and it was born in Rio de Janeiro in the early 20th century. The music's often described as sunny, bright, evocative, and emotional. And now I'll turn it over to Eric Stein, who's the mandolin player and producer of the band TIO CHORINHO, to talk a little bit more about the band and maybe tell us how you got into playing choro here in Toronto.
Thanks, Kristen, and thanks to Global Toronto for hosting us and putting on this entire conference. It's really an amazing thing to be happening right now. So I got into choro music about 10 or 12 years ago. Up to that point in my career, I was mostly specialized in Jewish music, klezmer music, and Yiddish music. And I think I was sort of looking for something a little different than that. And I got interested in choro music through the recordings of a mandolin player named Jacob do Bendalim, who was a master of this music in the mid-20th century. And it was initially just as a mandolin player, any great mandolin music is going to turn my crank, and that's what sort of attracted me initially. But then I found as I sort of got into learning about the music that a lot of what I was doing as a musician interpreting Jewish music was transferable into choro music. There were a lot of similar emotional intent and similar features in terms of the kind of technical demands that the music puts on the players and the way that the music is emotionally evocative, but also virtuosic and has really exciting rhythms. And so it was an interesting convergence for me between where I was coming from and what I was interested in to find this outlet. And I got interested in playing the music, and knowing that Toronto had a great Brazilian music scene, I started looking for people to play choro music with, and I couldn't find anybody. There was nobody playing choro music in Toronto at that time. So, so a nice Jewish kid from Toronto like me started playing this music with another nice Jewish kid from Toronto, and soon we tracked down some authentic Brazilians to join us, and they were familiar with the music because it is familiar to anybody that's grown up in Brazilian musical culture. But they considered it almost sort of an anachronistic kind of nostalgic music. But they were nonetheless interested in checking it out with us and starting to develop repertoire, and that's how the band kind of started. And we really delved into a lot of the traditional music from the canon, and more recently we've started to write our own music and try to expand the choro tradition in different directions, which is kind of there's a bit of an international movement around choro music, I would say, as it is sort of a niche thing, but there are little pockets of choro activity in different parts of the world, and I guess we're its representatives in Canada for now.
Yeah, it's really great to hear you highlight the fact that Toronto has so many great Brazilian musicians, because I think that's something that many people who haven't spent time in Toronto may not know. And how lucky for you to find, because I know some of the players that you were eventually joined up with are just so incredibly talented on their own right. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure to play with them, but it's also, as many musical projects that I'm involved in, it's nice for there not to be sort of cultural purity in terms of the musicians in the band. The fact that it is a mix of myself being Canadian born and Jewish roots, with three guys that are originally from Brazil but live here and play in all sorts of different musical styles, and the accordion player in the group is originally from Serbia. So that's something really, really typical of music making in Toronto, is that you see people from different cultures visiting other cultures through music, and thereby creating connections and understanding and opportunities to bring people together.
Absolutely. And I think that it's also something we've always tried to do at Uma Nota, and something that more broadly Global Toronto is trying to do.
Yeah, and Uma Nota was one of the first people to support us, so thanks for that.
Great. So why don't we go from there to actually watching some video of the band? If you want to give just like a really quick intro. This was part of, I understand, a recent rehearsal, the recording?
Yeah, so we hadn't played together for about 6 months due to COVID. But recently we got together because we were recording a digital concert for the Harbourfront Centre's Summer Music in the Garden series, which we just recorded last week and will broadcast on August 23rd. But we started rehearsing just about 2-3 weeks ago, and we decided to use the video of those rehearsals for this session just because it's the most fresh. We're still shaking off a little bit of rust in these videos, but there's some nice energy, and we also it was just, you could feel, for us it was really special to get together and play, because after so many months of not playing together, there was something very therapeutic about getting together to play.
Beautiful.
So we're going to hear initially a couple songs that are more traditional choro compositions by Jacob do Bandolim, who I mentioned earlier, and then the last few videos that we're going to see are original compositions by our guitar player Andre Valerio.
All right, well, let's have a watch. Thanks.
1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, four.
in your life?
Wow, that was really great. Thank you so much for that video. One thing that I've always really loved about TIO CHORINHO is how you guys really embody the music as a living tradition. You stay true to the forms, but you're innovative at the same time. And I think that's really incredible, and it comes through. And on that note, I was hoping, Eric, you could tell me a bit about how the band can fit into different kind of musical contexts and different stages and festivals, for example, if you want to go over that a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's been fun about playing in this band is that we've had the opportunity to perform in very different environments. So obviously any sort of context where Brazilian music is being featured, this group fits great. But we've also played at folk festivals and jazz festivals and of course world roots music festivals. We've played in Jewish music contexts. Jacob do Bendelim, in fact, was Jewish himself. So we've done tribute concerts to Jacob do Bendelim as a great Jewish musician in that context. And I think what's really essential about this music is that it's accessible to anybody, and people who have never heard it before are kind of instantly taken in by it. So in a jazz context, it resonates with the kind of things that jazz fans like, and it has a folky, traditional kind of quality to it that folk music fans like. Obviously, there's an ethnographic aspect to it that world music fans like. So we've been a bit chameleon-ish in terms of our ability to fit into different places, and that's been a boon for us in terms of finding places to play. And we've had grant support for our tours, as well as for recording. So there's lots of opportunity for us to get out and do what we do, hopefully, when the pandemic is done.
That's great. And you kind of touched on something there about the grant support for recording. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the new record that's on the way and maybe some of what you've done in the past with recording.
Yeah, so we put out our first record 4 years ago. It was called Choro Brazil, and it was nominated for 2 Canadian Folk Music Awards. And the record was it was all repertoire that was drawn from sort of the traditional choro repertoire that we had arranged in our own way. The new record is a bit of a departure from that because it features a majority of original material. And that's where we're sort of stretching our definition of choro music to include much more than just what would be considered strictly choro music. There's a lot of different influences in the original repertoire that spans the vast landscape of Brazilian musical culture, but also borrows from different influences that we're all interested in. So I feel like the band is kind of moving to a new stage at this point, and we were actually planning to get that record out this fall. I think we're probably going to hold off a little bit and see how things develop in the world and make sure that we don't miss the moment when we put it out, that we actually can capitalize on the release and hopefully go out and tour.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm sure there's a lot of artists in that same boat as you.
And the last 3 songs that we saw samples of in the video there, those are all original pieces that are part of the new record, and those songs will also be featured as part of this upcoming live set that we're doing for Summer Music in the Garden.
Right. And now I think you said that it was Andre Valerio who was the composer of those songs.
Yes, that's right.
And he also plays 7-string guitar in the band.
Yep.
Now, maybe you want to talk a bit about the other band members and.
Yeah. So Maninho Costa is our percussionist. He was our the first sort of real Brazilian that I played choro music with in Toronto. He comes from a very, very rich legacy of musicians in his family, and he's involved in a lot of different projects here in Toronto. Really known as one of the top Brazilian musicians in Toronto.
Yes.
On cavaquinho, we have Carlos Cardozo, who's a fantastic player and also busy in all sorts of different styles of Brazilian music, very busy in the samba scene as well. Andre, of course, on 7-string guitar, and on accordion, Milos Popovic, who is a longtime musical collaborator of mine from my group Beyond the Pale. He brings to choro music his incredible virtuosity and incredible improvisational skills. and we have a good time playing together. And there's also a frequent guest of ours is a fantastic Brazilian vocalist who lives in Quebec, Flavia Nascimento. And she just recorded with us a couple tunes as part of our Summer Music in the Garden set that's going to play next month. She was on our first record. She'll be on this next record as well. So we've had a long and very enjoyable collaboration with her, and we'd love to go out and tour with her because it really adds this incredible element to the group. And it's a nice female energy to.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a shame that there were no videos because of her living in Quebec and unable to travel frequently due to the pandemic. But I just want to highlight, I've already put in the chat for those of you watching the link to the Music Garden performance that they recorded this past weekend. And that will be on August 23rd. And that will be a great chance to see just the incredible energy of Flavia Nascimento. I'm lucky enough to call her a friend and sometime collaborator. Uma Nota has presented her many times, and she really is, has a very special energy. For the industry folks who are watching, I believe maybe 4 years ago, she was the Stingray winner at Mundial, and she's pretty unforgettable. So if you've seen her perform, you'll probably remember.
Larger than life, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good description.
Yeah.
And now we're basically down to our last moment here. So if there's anything else you want to add, Eric, I'll just say from Uma Nota, thank you to everyone who's been watching today. This has been a really interesting experience to do a virtual conference, but I've been very pleasantly surprised by how smooth it's been, and it's just been a real honor to participate.
Likewise. And thanks for presenting this spotlight with us on behalf of Uma Nota, and to all the conference folks for all your hard work. I know that everything these days takes about 10 times the amount of time and energy to accomplish. So putting on something like this is kind of mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And everyone enjoy the rest of the last day of Global Toronto here.